rejected Omega mocked by her pack, until the Alpha King discovered she was his fated mate. The kitchen of Thornwood Pack house smelled of bread and boiled cabbage, and Lira Ashwood had grown used to both the smell and the silence that followed her wherever she walked. She was 22 years old, with dark hair always tied back, and hands that bore small burns from years near the ovens. Most people in the pack did not look at her twice. The ones who did usually had something cruel to say. She was an Omega, the lowest rank in the pack, and worse than that, she was an Omega who had never shown a wolf form. Every pack member shifted into their wolf by the time they turned 18. Lira was 22, and still human in every way that mattered to the pack. They called her the broken one behind her back, and sometimes to her face. That morning she was carrying a tray of bread to the dining hall when Daniela, the pack's beta and the closest thing Lira had to an enemy, stepped into her path. "Watch where you're going," Daniela said, though Lira had not moved an inch. "I'm sorry," Lira said quietly, the way she always did. Apologizing cost her nothing, and arguing cost her everything. Daniela's eyes swept over her with open dislike. "The Alpha King is visiting today. Try not to embarrass us. Actually, better idea. Stay in the kitchen. Don't let anyone important see your face." A few pack members nearby laughed. Lira said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence healed faster than words ever could. She did not know, as she returned to the kitchen, that her life was about to change before the sun went down. The Alpha King's name was Ronan Voss, and he ruled over 5 packs joined together under one coalition. He was tall, serious, and carried himself like a man who had never once doubted his own strength. He had come to Thornwood to renew an old treaty, nothing more. He expected a simple visit, greetings, a meal, a signed agreement, and then he would leave by morning. He did not expect to feel his entire world shift the moment a servant girl poured wine into his cup. It happened during the welcoming feast. Lira had been ordered, despite Daniela's earlier warning, to serve the head table because 2 other servants had fallen ill. She moved quietly, eyes down, trying to be invisible the way she had practiced since childhood. When she reached the Alpha King's seat, she leaned forward to fill his cup, and her fingers brushed against his hand. The moment their skin touched, something inside Ronan roared to life. It was a feeling every werewolf had heard about, but few ever experienced. The recognition of a fated mate. It came like a wave of warmth and certainty, impossible to mistake for anything else. His wolf, usually calm and controlled, surged forward, with a need to protect, to claim, to never let this person out of his sight again. Ronan kept his face still, though his hand trembled slightly, as he set down the cup. Lira, who had felt the same strange warmth pass through her, assumed it was nerves. She bowed quickly and stepped back, hurrying away before she could make any further mistake. She had no idea that the most powerful man in 5 territories had just felt his entire future settle onto his shoulders. Ronan did not sleep well that night. He sat by the window of his guest chamber, turning the moment over and over in his mind. A king did not simply announce a mate bond in the middle of a treaty visit, not when the Omega in question seemed to hold no status in her own pack. If he revealed the truth too quickly, it could put her in danger from rivals who wished to weaken him through her. He needed to understand her world first, who she was, how she lived, and why a kitchen servant carried herself like someone who expected to be hurt. The next morning, he requested a tour of the pack grounds, and made sure his path would cross through the kitchen and laundry areas, places an Alpha King would normally never bother to visit. What he saw troubled him deeply. He saw Daniela order Lira to carry loads too heavy for one person, while others stood by and watched. He saw an older pack member shove past her without apology, knocking a basket from her hands, and laugh when she knelt to pick everything up alone. He saw the way other Omegas avoided her, as if her bad luck might somehow spread to them. And through all of it, Lira never once raised her voice, or asked for help. She simply endured. By the time the sun set on his second day, Ronan understood 2 things clearly. First, that Lira Ashwood was his fated mate. Second, that she had been treated like she was worth nothing by the very people meant to protect her. He decided he would not let that continue. The chance to act came faster than he expected. On the 3rd day, Daniela approached the pack alpha with an accusation. She claimed that a valuable silver pendant had gone missing from her chambers, and that she had seen Lira near her door earlier that day. It was a lie, built entirely on old resentment, but lies spoken with enough confidence often sound like truth. The pack alpha, a tired man named Holden, who rarely involved himself in matters concerning Omegas, agreed to hold a formal hearing that evening. Word spread quickly through the pack house. Many gathered simply to watch, expecting Lira to be punished the way she always was. Quietly, without resistance, without anyone stepping in to help her. Lira stood before the gathered pack with her hands folded in front of her, eyes on the floor. She had not taken the pendant. She had never even entered Daniela's chambers. But she also knew that her word meant little against a Beta's. And she braced herself the way she always did, waiting for the punishment to be decided. "I did not take anything," she said softly when asked. "I was in the kitchen the entire afternoon. Anyone there could confirm it." "Convenient that the kitchen staff would protect their own," Daniela said, smiling slightly. "I want her exiled. We don't need thieves dragging down this pack's name, especially during a treaty visit." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Holden, eager to avoid trouble during such an important week, looked ready to agree. That was when Ronan stepped forward. The crowd fell silent immediately. An Alpha King did not interfere in another pack's internal matters unless something serious was at stake. His presence alone made everyone straighten, made even Holden hesitate. "Before you decide anything," Ronan said, his voice calm but carrying easily across the hall, "I would like to ask a question. Where exactly was this pendant kept?" Daniela blinked, caught off guard. "In my chamber. On my dresser." "And who else has access to your chamber?" "That's not relevant," Daniela said quickly. "I'm telling you, I saw her near my door." "Near a door is not the same as inside a room," Ronan said. "I've spent the last 3 days observing this pack, and I noticed something interesting. This young woman has been blamed for things before, hasn't she? An old hunting accident, I was told. A missing basket of supplies last winter, and now a pendant." He let the silence stretch, watching the discomfort grow on several faces in the crowd. "It seems whenever something goes wrong here, the blame finds its way to the same person, regardless of evidence." Holden shifted uncomfortably. "Your Highness, this is an internal pack matter." "It became my matter," Ronan said, "the moment I realized something about this young woman." He walked forward, stopping directly in front of Lira. She lifted her eyes to his, confused and a little afraid, unsure what was happening, or why the most powerful man in the coalition was looking at her, as if she mattered. "3 days ago," Ronan said, loud enough for the entire hall to hear, "during the welcoming feast, I felt something I have waited my entire life to feel. A bond, a pull I could not explain with logic, only recognize with instinct." He reached out, gently taking Lira's hand in his, and the warmth between them flared again, visible this time in the way both their eyes widened slightly. "This woman is my fated mate." The hall erupted into stunned whispers. Daniela's face went pale. Holden looked as though the floor had opened beneath him. That's impossible," Daniela stammered. "She doesn't even have a wolf form. She's nothing." "She is everything," Ronan said simply, his voice sharp enough to silence the room again. "And perhaps the reason she has no visible wolf form is not weakness, but something far rarer. Suppressed gifts often hide beneath years of mistreatment. A wolf does not show itself to a world that has only ever tried to hurt it." He turned to Holden. "I expect a full investigation into how members of this pack have treated my mate. And I expect this false accusation to be withdrawn immediately." Holden, eager now to avoid the king's anger, ordered the pendant searched for properly. It was found within the hour, tucked behind Daniela's dresser, where it had simply fallen, exactly as an honest mistake might explain. There had been no theft at all, only a convenient excuse to remove someone Daniela had despised for years. Daniela was stripped of her Beta title that same night by coalition law, which did not tolerate false accusations made against a king's mate. She was given until morning to leave Thornwood territory. Lira stood frozen through all of it, overwhelmed by a day that had turned her entire world upside down. She did not know how to process being protected, defended, chosen, after a lifetime of being overlooked. That night, Ronan found her sitting alone near the edge of the training field, looking out at the dark trees beyond Pack territory. "You don't have to accept the bond," he said gently, sitting a respectful distance away. "I won't force anything onto you. I only wanted to make sure you were safe, and that the people who hurt you faced consequences." Lira finally looked at him, really looked, instead of keeping her eyes down the way habit demanded. "Why would you do all that? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Ronan said. "I know you apologized for something that wasn't your fault. I know you carried more weight than anyone should without asking for help. I know you've spent years being told you're worth nothing, and somehow you still chose kindness over bitterness." He paused. "That tells me everything I need to know." "I'm not who you think I am," Lira said quietly. "I don't have a wolf. I'm not strong. I'm not—" "You survived years of cruelty without losing yourself," Ronan interrupted softly. "That is its own kind of strength, even if no one ever called it that." Lira didn't answer right away. The wind moved through the trees, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to sit beside someone without bracing for an insult. Over the following weeks, Ronan stayed in Thornwood territory longer than any treaty visit required. He did not rush her. He did not demand the bond be completed before she was ready. Instead, he simply stayed near her, walking with her in the mornings, listening when she spoke, defending her quietly whenever old habits of disrespect tried to creep back into how others treated her. Slowly, something inside Lira that had been locked away for years began to loosen. One evening, while walking together near the edge of the forest, Lira felt a strange heat building beneath her skin, different from anything she had felt before. Ronan noticed it too, his eyes widening slightly. "Don't be afraid," he said gently. "Let it happen." For the first time in her life, Lira stopped holding herself back. Her body shifted, bones and skin rearranging in a way that should have hurt, but instead felt like relief, like a held breath finally released. When the change settled, a wolf stood where Lira had been, silver-furred, with faint icy markings along her back that seemed to shimmer under the moonlight. It was a rare and beautiful sight, the kind of wolf spoken about only in old pack stories, a bloodline many believed had disappeared generations ago. Ronan stared at her, awe clear on his face. "I knew it," he whispered. "I knew you were never broken. You were only waiting for somewhere safe to become who you really are." When she shifted back, tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from a feeling she had never experienced before, being wanted exactly as she was. In the months that followed, Lira left Thornwood Pack behind, not as the Omega everyone had mocked, but as the future Luna of the Coalition, standing beside an Alpha King who had seen her worth before anyone else dared to. Thornwood was placed under review for its treatment of its own members, and many changes followed in the years after, though Lira rarely thought of that pack with anything but distance now. She had spent her whole life being told she was nothing. It took one fated bond, one honest king, and one quiet moment of courage for her to finally believe otherwise.